Temporary president at Nova Southeastern University. The dean, Dr. Jones, asked me to introduce our honoree this evening. I say honoree, he was one of the Hall of Fame honorees last year, and his picture is downstairs with the rest of the honorees, but you're in for a great treat tonight. Dr. Jones is out at an AACSB conference to be sure that we get that accreditation that we all seek and are looking for. So he asked me to fill in for him this evening. As I said, you're in for a great treat. Mark Templeton is no stranger to NSU or to South Florida. But interestingly enough, he started managing and building a company right here in Fort Lauderdale that only had 30 employees. And when he left as CEO, it had 10,000 employees with a $3 billion business. Now, today, we take for granted being able to work at home. Matter of fact, a lot of people take with disdain that we can work from home because we're available now 24/7 to have access to our offices and our computers through virtual private networking. Citrix called it virtual workplace. But 25 years ago, that was it. Citrix developed the VPN right here, that virtual workplace that we all take for granted. And here's the guy that led it and developed it, Mr. Mark Templeton. You're in for a treat.
George, thank you so much for that kind introduction. And you know way more about Citrix than I thought you did. But it's a real joy and pleasure to be here tonight. And let's make sure we lock that door because I like captive audience, okay? Where you can't escape, but I'm only kidding around. Yeah. So, but it really is a pleasure to be here tonight, and I'm hoping to tell you a little bit about the Citrix journey and my journey, which are hard to pull apart after being there almost 21 years, and try to help you leave here with some ideas about your journey and how you think about your journey going forward. And I remember some years ago, we lived in Charlottesville, Virginia, and we attended an Anglican church. And one Sunday, we were driving to church, and out front on the billboard was a single word, attribution. And I thought, attribution, I wonder what this is going to be about. And it turns out that the words were about what do you attribute your life to? And I think many people attribute failure to someone else. The world's against me, bad luck, etc. And their success to, man, I'm smart, all right? I'm great. I'm good. I heard something on CNBC today from one of the analysts, and I loved this. He said, no matter how rich you get or are, the one thing you can never afford is arrogance. Okay? And so, all these years later, because that would have been in like 1985, I remember that. And it was very, very meaningful to me to understand what journeys are about and what role you play in the journey, and what role luck, blessings, and most of all, the people around you that work with you, that take an interest in you, mentor you, etc., play in that final outcome. And I'm going to try to help you see some of that. So I'm going to start in 1975 at North Carolina State University, where I was studying product design. So I'm not an engineer. I did sleep at a Holiday Inn Express last night. This is me right here, okay? Believe it or not, I know you can't recognize the haircut, okay? But this is me with my product design class, and we're doing a project here at the forge. Okay, you see the forge down here. And you see this smoke and some pretty shady characters. And, you know, some people say this smoke, you know, might have been from the forge, and who knows where it was coming from, you know. But this is where I got my start, you know. And I got my start at the College of Design, where I learned, unknowingly, by the way, I was learning something that we now call design thinking. Now, at the time, I was going to the College of Design. I thought I was studying design, right? But I thought I was getting skills. So that's a great seat right here. I thought I was getting skills that were sort of like a vocation. But what I've learned is that design thinking and design skills are not a vocation, they're foundational. If you want to read an amazing book that explains this, this is, and you only want to read one, and that's kind of my rule of thumb on a topic. You know, you read one great one. This is a fantastic book, all right? And it's about do you matter and how great design really inspires great companies. But in the end, it explains design in a holistic way, and that's what I learned, and this is a big piece of my foundation and what I attribute a lot of what I learned and what I did along the way. So most people think design is about how things look, the aesthetic of things, all right? But design is actually a broad set of things, from aesthetic to actually reframing the whole problem and how you state a problem, all right? So yes, it's about the aesthetic of blending sort of form and function to be simple and beautiful things that people love to use. But it's even more so about reframing problems and thinking creatively and challenging the status quo and what I consider to be the most powerful force in the universe, and that is inertia. And the reason I think it's the most powerful force in the universe is because inertia, in the end, especially in a business, is about doing today what we did yesterday. Okay? And it's why? Because, hey, it worked out yesterday, so why wouldn't it work out today? And if you keep stringing that along over and over and over again, you end up in a bad place. So challenging the status quo by reframing problems and putting new lenses on them is important. And we use these principles at Citrix to frame our design thinking discipline and what we tried to teach everyone in the company as they onboarded and as they developed as individual contributors and as managers and executives. So let me give you an example. A friend of mine was on the board of director of Diebold. Who knows Diebold? Okay, so Diebold makes, first of all, a lot of ATMs. Okay, you probably have seen their logo on ATMs. But actually, they're one of the biggest manufacturers of vaults in the world. So they made the vault that the royal family in Kuwait used to house all of the antiquities and treasures of the family. And during the first war in Iraq, after the war, Diebold engineers were called in because the Iraqis had taken over the royal palace, and obviously they were taking everything they could. and they were trying to get into this vault, but they never got into it. And so the engineers were asked to come over and figure out, all right, how are we going to open it up? But also, what did they do? And what they calculated is that they looked at the front of the vault. It was completely mangled. They estimated the sort of ergs and firepower, joules, whatever the engineering terms are, that were pointed at the front of the vault. And then they stepped back and they said, this is interesting. If they would have taken 1/10 of that energy and pointed it at the side or the back, they would have gotten in. So this is what's called reframing problems and thinking out of the box. And a saying I always like to use at Citrix that was given to me, I didn't invent it, is that your point of view is worth 50 IQ points. So if you have the courage to stick with and have a point of view, it can be worth 50 IQ points and make you smarter than your competitor, smarter than the next person that's trying to accomplish the same task. This is the essence of design thinking and how I see it in kind of this real world. So I got my start at in product design at NC State. My first job, which I don't know, how many of you will be going to your first job after NSU? Yeah, that's what I thought. Very, very few. Yeah. So, you don't sort of, get out of school and then, become CEO of Citrix, right? That doesn't happen, right? So my first job, I was a draftsman for a sheet metal and roofing company. That was my first job out of college. It did not require a design degree. It didn't require a college degree. It just required the skills that were needed to do drafting, drawings. And the luck of working for an entrepreneur, Fred Hamlin, who really taught me a lot. I'm trying to, emotionally, because this man is a really important part of my life. And after about a year and a half, Fred said, "Mark, you got to get out of here." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because you can go so much farther than Hamlin companies can take you. So you've got to go back to school. You've got to learn business." And so he kicked me out. And that's when I ended up going to University of Virginia, Darden School of Business, and got my MBA there. And I was telling George that, this is pretty easy to understand. I got my agriculture at NC State, and I got my culture at UVA. Okay? So, and a great business school and great environment. I'm not going to sort of dive into that, but it led me to my first leg of my career, where I actually went into the wood products industry. And in the wood products industry, I worked for a kitchen cabinet company doing marketing. And then I started my own business with a partner making wood moldings. So just like the moldings you see around these panels, we made moldings like this. And we built the company to being the largest hardwood molding mill in the United States. And along the way, my partner, Vaughn, said, "Mark, we need computers to help us optimize the factory. Because in a wood business, it's kind of like being a butcher. The saying, the way to be a profitable butcher is you have to sell in the entire pig, including the oink, right? And by the way, the profit is in the oink and not in the premier cuts, is the way it sort of works out. Same thing in wood. You have to sell the knots, you have to sell the sawdust, you have to sell, everything. And you have to optimize how you use wood. We needed computers to do that. So I went out looking for software and computers to do that, and it didn't exist. So I came back and I said to Vaughn, "Hey, there aren't. It's not out there. He says, now what do we do? And I said, well, I'll write the software. And he said, do you know how to do that? And I said, no, but how hard could it be? Again, long story, very short, I wrote the software, learned a lot, and the main thing I learned is that I loved software a lot more than hardwood, okay? And that's what led me into the software business. But the key learning here is that I went into the software business loving the business outcomes and the human outcomes that software and technology could provide. In the end, I didn't love it for the zeros and ones. I loved it for how it could change lives, change the world, etc. And so this is the progression that led me to Citrix. So in 1995, I went to Citrix, still had some hair, as you see, all right? And I joined Citrix as VP for marketing. And as George says, it was a very small company. We had raised $16 million in venture capital. We had trailing 12-month revenue of $15 million when we went public on December 8th of 1995. And 6 months after I joined the company. So this is an example of luck and timing that not about being smart. Okay? It's just not. And I remember about a month after I got there, two things happened. We had kind of an all-hands meeting to introduce the new marketing guy to the company, where I thanked everyone for doing all the really heavy lifting of a startup, the heavy lifting of going through 3 insolvencies and multiple changes in the strategy and in the executive team. And we were now at a place where we had product market fit. We just had to figure out how to scale it up and do it over and over and over again. So I thanked everyone for that. The second meeting was kind of an executive team meeting where Roger said, our CEO, I'm going to talk to the board about going public. What do y'all think? So we went around the table, everyone who'd been in the company for a while, yes. I got to me and I said, not a chance, not a chance, no. Actually, it was hell no, all right? And everyone looked at me and they said, why? I said, there are 2 reasons. First of all, I've been here a month and we don't have a repeatable process for finding customers, telling them our story, and delivering our technology to them in a good unit economics way. So that was my job. I accepted that, but we were a month in. The second reason was I had come from Silicon Valley, and I said, we're never going to build a big software company in South Florida because we don't have any competitors down the road training the people we need to recruit. So we're going to have to train everybody ourselves. I like, how are we going to do that? We're not going to be able to do that. Thank God I was wrong about both things, all right? Because we, got busy on the systems to make our marketing and demand generation, et cetera, and fulfillment very repeatable, very frictionless. And we then we realized that we had to go reach out into the South Florida community, get people from Alamo, from the cruise lines, from everywhere, from the JW family, wherever, they were great people who wanted to get into the tech business, and we had to recruit from the outside. And we always recruited engineers from like Michigan, Ohio State, et cetera, wherever there was lots of RIT, wherever there was lots of snow flying, or wherever we thought there were students who had family, had parents or family that had retired to Florida, and they had a reason to be here. And we did the same thing with executives. So that was our formula for building the company, and a company that at its core had an incredibly strong belief system. I was saying to George a little earlier, it's really hard for a lot of people to understand, but we felt we were on a mission from God, all right, in a positive, aspirational way that we could make the world a better place, all right, by allowing people the flexibility to work and play from anywhere so they could live better and work better. And you see this little picture here? I'm going to digress for a moment because, this picture, I stole it from a project that our ad agency was doing, and we didn't own the picture. And of course, the marketing department looked at this and said, "What? Get rid of this thing." They said, here you go. If you want to use a picture like this on this chart, here you go. And they had, these great-looking guys and gals on trampolines and stuff, and everybody's cool, millennials and everything. It's like, no, you don't get it. You don't get it. This picture is the essence of what we believe, what we stand for. So if you look at this, all right, this is the feeling, the human outcome we were trying to deliver to customers. So we've all been on trampolines, right? And where in the jump is this person? Where?
At the highest point.
At the highest point. What's the feeling at the highest point?
Freedom.
Freedom, great. What else?
No initial velocity. So
Yeah. Weightlessness?
weightlessness.
Weightlessness. Fantastic. That's great. Weightlessness is what a feeling that is. And then the second piece of this is this person is having an authentic moment. This is not a BS moment. This is an authentic moment. And we want to be a company that's authentic, and we want to deliver authentic moments to people that make them feel weightless. So that's why this picture, they probably don't use it anymore because I'm gone. But the company still stands for these ideas, even to this moment, all right? So at some point you got to say, all right, well, here, let me just go back. You have to be able to express that. So we were having a really hard time expressing it. And so in 2001, we decided the best way to express it would be to make a video of how this would feel, this weightless, authentic feeling would transpire, and how would it look? So we made this video back in 2001 called Virtual Workplace. Let's see, I think I'm going to have to back up. And so there's no audio to this. I'm the voiceover. It's 7 minutes. You can see it on YouTube. But it's really a story about the human impact that you can have when the workplace is virtual. And here's a guy, see, he's taking a device with him. He's moving his experience in workplace with him to the car. Biometric authentication, voice to text, gets home, pulls people together, pulls information together, walks into his family room where he has a big screen with a camera and has a video conference with people around the world to help solve a real world problem that the company is having. Using multiple devices, using easily smooth roaming, and in the end, they win the business. And this was the kind of outcome we wanted to provide our customers for their business and the feeling we wanted them to have. So, by the way, in this video, we didn't build any of the products specifically. In fact, when we launched this thing, I was so excited. It was at a huge customer event. We played the video, and it was crickets from the audience. I thought people would be cheering, et cetera. I think they were wondering what we were smoking down here in South Florida. Luckily, our engineering and product teams said, "Oh, so that's where we're going. That's what we're doing." And they got busy doing it. And we did it over and over and over across many years. We added collaboration to remote access. We added video conferencing. We added the ability to accelerate web applications and virtualize desktops and so forth. And that really steered the company for many years here, and the kind of growth you see here in terms of size and profitability, et cetera, that we're very proud of. But at the core, and what I'm most proud of about Citrix, is I didn't invent the company. I didn't even invent the culture, but I was a steward of the culture, and I was a steward of the value system of the company. And this is the value system that we insisted on being in place. Humility, which is all about putting someone else before yourself. It's about obligation before opportunity, and using that as a principle to make decisions around, do I help this customer that's already, a great customer of ours, or do I talk to the new customer that brings in new revenue? Real easy decision. Secondly is integrity, and that's always doing the right thing. I mean, always. And there are a lot of times when doing the right thing has a big price. All right, a big, either public or legal or whatever penalty to it, but you've got to do it, because taking shortcuts is a lack of integrity. And we just insisted on it, and we let everyone know that. And if you were ever asked to do anything outside of something that had integrity, then I wanted to know as CEO of the company. Third is respect. A lot of ways to define respect. Here's the way we defined it. Respect is not a proxy for hierarchy. So in other words, the higher you are in the organization, the more respect, and the lower you are, the lesser respect. No, everyone gets the same respect. Hierarchy is a necessary evil of managing complexity. That's what it is, all right? And by the way, today, there's less and less hierarchy, more and more flat organizations, and technology is a core enabler of that. Very proud of that. And then the last is conviction, and it's about always having intentions that are honorable. You can make mistakes, you can be wrong, it's okay, as long as your intentions in what you did in making that mistake were honorable. If they're diabolical and you make a mistake, you get in trouble. You're out. And this sort of conviction in the company led us through lots of pivots, because we had, as part of that, real core beliefs that we thought were making the world a better place. So this was our formula at Citrix. It gets down to actually one page here. We believed in culture, which is all about an employee experience based on values. Okay? And we were as insistent as we could possibly be in this, and scaling it up to many thousands of people. It's one of the hardest parts of scaling up, especially when you go global. The second thing, part of the formula, was about empathy, about anticipating what customers needed and delivering them an experience before they ever thought they even needed it. And we did that because we believed that work was not a place, and we believed in creating fantastic human outcomes like that weightlessness in an authentic moment. And the truth is, if you do these two things over and over and over and over again for 20 years, whatever, 21 years that I was there, and great things happen. And so you notice there's no equal sign here, because it depends upon who you are when you look at the equal sign here. I like to, my preference is to look at this as this equals pride in what we do, and pride in what we do creates a virtuous cycle that reinforces growth. That's what I saw in this. And it also created a lot of shareholder value. So you can create great value for employees, add it to great value for customers, and you can create great shareholder value. So this is a chart of our stock value and return from when we went public on December 8th of 95 till when I left and retired in 2015, because there's a new story, new leadership, et cetera, after that. And I'm very proud of this, and this is compared to the NASDAQ, and then a few of our competitors are also down here, okay? And so this, it shows in the results when you focus on employees and culture and customer value and really delivering what they're anticipating. So along the way, you get a lot of scars. You learn a lot. And so I'm going to share sort of my 5 immutable laws of life that are, as you see here, they're always a work in process because you're always learning. You need to be forever a student. Secondly is because, there are always new things to learn. So let me just take you quickly through them. The first is following your heart. You've probably heard that a number of times, but it's number one. It's number one. The reason it's number one is if you follow your heart, you're following something you love. If you're doing something you love, you're going to be great at it. The problem that most people have in following their heart is their head takes over, okay? And they let their head overrule their heart. And I'll give you an example. So I graduate from business school at UVA. I have all these job offers. I make a decision. I'm there for 3 months and I'm saying, I hate this. I hate this. I hate the culture, et cetera. And you would know what it is, and actually you're all customers of it probably, But I hated it. And the common thinking in those days, remember this is 1978, is you take a job, all right, and you're there for a long time. And making a mistake is a big mistake. And I decided that, I'm gonna fix this problem. I'm gonna fail fast and fix this problem. So I called the company that had offered me the least money, but where the culture and the people were the best. And I went there, and I did it quickly. And I was fortunate to learn that very early in my career, because the things you learn early in your career, you can monetize over and over and over and over again. The things you learn later in your career, you don't have as much time to generate monetization from them. The second law is seek out honest criticism. Now, a lot of people hate criticism. They hate coaching conversations and evaluations, et cetera. And it turns out that actually, this feedback is a blessing. And I'll tell you why it's a blessing. Because as a manager, the easiest thing in the world to do is to say, hey, you're doing great. Keep on going. And what's actually going on is they're looking for your replacement, and one day you come in, you don't have a job. Instead, it's an act of love for them to say, you know what? You got a problem with this, you got a problem with that, you got a problem with that. Here's what you need to do, A, B, and C. And that criticism is an act of love. So when you receive it, consider it a blessing. And when you're the manager providing it, think of it that way. I'm actually, loving this person and doing something that, it'd be easier for me to just, say nothing, move on, right? Really important, honest criticism. Third is embrace the charette. All right, so you need to know what a charette is first. How many people know what a charette is? Okay. All right, so for everyone else, I'll explain it. So first of all, it's a term, it means little cart, or little cart. It's French. And it's used in the world of design and design thinking because Louis XIV would hire all these artists to do these works for him. And everyone knows artists are flaky. They miss deadlines, etc. So he started chopping their heads off when they missed a deadline. So what artists then began to do is say, okay, I got this deadline. I'm not ready. So they'd put the work in the back of a little cart and they would finish it on the way to the palace. And the charrette is that time before a key deadline that really matters, where you're really going for it. It turns out that that's the time when you're most creative, you're most decisive in embracing the constraints that you have in time and in what you want to deliver. And this is where the best ideas happen. Most people hate it. It's like, hey, I've got a presentation, 2 weeks from now. I'll get it done tomorrow, and we'll refine it and everything, and then, we'll put it in the can, and then we'll show up and throw up. Okay? I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way, but I'll just do it. And you don't get the maximum power from your team or yourself that way. By the way, I was pulling these charts together in the car on the way here. Okay? Fourth is about inspiration. A lot, so you can read this. Inspire yourself. Don't wait for the inspiration bus. Now, what I mean by that is a lot of people show up to work, expecting to be inspired by someone else, and don't realize that they have the power to inspire, starting with yourself. So how do you inspire yourself? Well, you read a book, you watch a movie, you find a role model, a person, a company, something that really moves you, and you let it guide your ideas and how you think about things, and you have to do it regularly. I'm not a voracious reader, but I love reading everything that Winston Churchill has ever said and written, etc. He inspires me. If you haven't seen Darkest Hour, go see it. I'm inspired by people who do courageous things and who do things out of conviction, even though they may not be the most popular thing to do. But don't wait for someone else to inspire you. Inspire yourself. And last is dare to be real. And, I think, I don't want to sort of break into jail here, but, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the world where people aren't authentic, all right? And people are trying to be something that they're not. And, by the way, if you try to be something you're not, you have to be 10x luckier than if you're just yourself, because who you are as yourself is the most powerful thing you can ever be. So I say this means take pride in your strengths and being honest about what your strengths are, but also be really honest about your weaknesses. And what you do is you highlight your strengths, you put your energy there, and then in your weaknesses, that's where you develop yourself, but that's where you surround yourself by the kind of people that can help you be successful, and you can help and complement them as well. So that's how you act on this. So daring to be real. So these are the 5 immutable laws that will forever be a work in process, and how when I kind of look out there always into the future, I tend to focus on the future. I try to find patterns. I'm kind of a pattern matching sort of person. So I can, because it's through patterns that allows you to predict and have a point of view about what's going to happen. It's, by the way, it's how artificial intelligence, machine and deep learning works, all right? And we're the best AI deep learning machines ever made, in all of time. So you look out there and, yeah, you see a lot of stars, but maybe you start to see a pattern. And you see a pattern, that actually you can do something with about connecting this pattern together into a picture, because in the end, a career ends up being a picture of all the decisions you make along the way. And that's a decision that you make where you're going to face points in time where there'll be forks in the road, and there'll be times where you connect the dots that actually turns this view of the future into a picture that's called your life and your career. And, excuse me, and the difference you've made along the way. If you want to be incredibly inspired, if you haven't already done so, listen to Steve Jobs' commencement speech. He talked about not being able to connect the dots looking backwards, but to connect, you can only connect the dots looking backwards, all right? So it's easy for me to say this looking backwards. But the dots looking forward is about your passion, your beliefs, having the courage to fail fast and make a decision to move forward and move on, trying new things, curiosity, persistence. It's all of those things that allow you to connect each one of these things, and a whole lot of luck around the people you meet along the way, who takes interest in you to help you, all right? So that when you get to be an old guy like me, you can come back here and talk about NSU the way I've talked about NC State and what a difference it made in your career and setting you off on a direction that allows you to paint the picture that you want to paint of a career and a life that makes a difference. So that's the lecture for tonight. Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you. Thank you. So, questions, comments, no sharp objects, but sharp questions are, okay. And no rotten tomatoes. Sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much to being here and knowing about all this stuff. And we appreciate actually to be here heading school as a student. My question is, I really spent the last 2 days thinking about the brainstorming and reading about the brainstorming to get in a startup idea. And in your speech, you mentioned a lot about design thinking, critical thinking, and also about how you inspire yourself. So the question is, how we can get the best of our thought? In which idea, in which way we can get the best of our thought, of what's going on inside our mentality?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And great question. Great question. So I'd say the core of the answer is a word called prototypes. Okay? So get really good at prototyping in very low resolution so that you can take brainstorm ideas and turn them into a physical prototype. Could be a picture, could be a physical thing, depending upon what you're, looking at, and do that fast. Do it and do it many, many times. Because what I find in brainstorming is it's really easy to draw things on a whiteboard and Post-its. And around the room, everyone thinks, oh, we're all thinking the same way, but you're not, until you actually turn it into something tangible. And I think even that virtual workplace video at Citrix, it was a prototype. It was a low-cost prototype around a whole bunch of ideas we had that we were brainstorming, none of which we knew would ever work in terms of being a business. But, it told us a lot about which way to go. And then once you prototype, then you have to test. And your prototypes then, you narrow them and then you raise their resolution. You make them fewer but more precise, et cetera, and specific based upon testing in somehow the real world. You want to put your idea in front of someone who you think has a problem that you're solving. All right. So that's how I would try to answer your question, to put that into practice. Okay. You're welcome. Other? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. And for what IBM did with hardware, Citrix has done for the software marketplace with software. So thank you. It was under your leadership.
Thank you.
On the map down here.
Thank you.
You talk about patterns. So as Citrix went through the different levels, was there a framework or a process that you guys used that as you went through each growth level, you would come across probably the same problem? And then how would you guys solve it?
Yeah, great question. I'll tell you, actually, this is a true story, okay? So it was 2000 and it was just after we made this video in 2001. We had the first year where our revenue declined from close to 600 million to 527 million. You see, I kind of remember these things. And we were in trouble. And I was a member of kind of a software CEO roundtable that met out in Silicon Valley. So I go to the meeting, and part of the meeting was a presentation from McKinsey, the consulting firm and company, where they were there presenting some research they had done in hopes of attracting consulting business from the software CEOs that were in the room. So they made this presentation, and the presentation was called The $1 Billion Myth. And the presentation was research around why there were so few billion-dollar software companies. And they did a presentation. They handed out the executive summary. I still have it. It's 5 pages. So I get on the plane, I read it, and I said, well, first of all, we can't afford McKinsey, all right? But secondly, they gave us the formula. They gave us the playbook in the executive summary. And they talked about the various glass ceilings that companies face at each level, and what happens at the sort of the first stage. You sort of hit the ceiling because typically entrepreneurs have a hard time standing on the shoulders of others. And so you reach the capacity of an individual, highly imaginative, highly driven, highly passionate person, and you have a single product and so forth. So we looked at this, it made sense. I shared it with the team, we had offsites, blah, 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 and it gave us the formula for actually growing. And we turned that executive summary into an internal project that every Citrite, is what we call ourselves, knew, called Project X1. And it was our project to break through $1 billion in revenue in 2006. So we were about half that size. At the time we launched it, and in 2006 we reported almost 1.2 billion in revenue. But we put all those things into practice about scaling, because you have to be proactive about growing up. All right? So, one of the metaphors I like to use is, I think that companies are just like people. They have personalities, they have a DNA, they have specific competencies, ways of doing things that's usually described by the term culture, all right? But they don't just grow just like children and people. They don't just grow randomly on their own. You need mom and dad. And mom and dad, their role is to give children, in that case, my opinion, roots and wings, all right? And as a leadership team is there to give a company roots and wings so that it can break through and grow. And you have to do it proactively. It doesn't happen organically, all right? So, high level, that's how we, face this. And you hit the problems just regularly. Yes, there are some things that are big step functions, like going from a single product and a single way to deliver to a customer segment, to you turn that technology into multiple products that you deliver through multiple types of routes to market and customer segments. And those are big step function kinds of activities. But then there are the other things that happen sort of every day along the way. Oh, you know that HR system that we bought 5 years ago? Yeah, we didn't know that it tops out at 1,000 employees. Like what? You know, so as things break, they just in this kind of growth, that's what you expect, and you just have to keep fixing the things that are broken and try to anticipate as best you can. So. Well.
Just along those lines, it's always been one of my fascinations is going to scale, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
As you grow,
Mm-hmm.
you see lots of companies and sometimes universities, as they grow, they try to solve their growth problem by throwing more people at it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's getting into the idea of the continual redesign as you go.
Yes.
Like you said, this HR system went away. How do you sustain, you talk a lot about culture.
Right.
It's keeping that going because it is a constant reinvention and constantly restructuring who you are.
Yeah, it's an everyday battle. I mean, you don't, it's not something you just say, you can read the blogs and everything and say these great companies, they've solved this. Trust me, I've been inside many of them, and it's chaos, all right? So, and that's what you want. That's how you solve these things continuously. It's kind of like the way an anthill looks, okay? But the culture has to be set up so people can do it. If the culture is set up to, for example, to penalize mistakes and not empower people, then you're going to, you're going to have a problem with this sort of continuous process. But if people are rewarded for inventing things and reinventing, et cetera, and failing fast and recovering and with a little bit of a framework around it, then, you can do it. But you can never declare victory on it, I think. And I think, further as companies scale, you get beyond the because of complexity, you get beyond sort of the ability for a functional organization to be efficient. And that's, when you have to, really insist on more matrix kinds of relationships where this group owns the budget and the decisions around spending, and this group owns the people themselves and, their performance and recruiting, et cetera. And that way you get collaboration across functions, and you get reinvention of things, that are more complex across an organization. It's,
So you're subscribing to a matrix type of operations to drive growth and scale?
Yeah, well, I think you try to stay functional as long as you can. However, you get to a certain size where the math doesn't work because functional organizations that go global will tend to have to replicate superstructure and all this kind of thing around, around themselves. And so you have to go to more of a matrix kind of organization. It's an order of magnitude more complex to operate. And when it comes to leaders that are not on the center of excellence or functional side, because a matrix organization will have a business unit side that's focused on, geographies or markets or customer segments. There are a lot of ways to do it. And on the other side are more the functional, and they all report, they're all on the same team. So it takes much more enlightened leadership at that table to operate a company like that, because most people say, oh, you want to do that? Give me all the resources, and I'll be the one throat to choke and I'll get it done, which is in a small organization, it works. I mean, you do it, and you do it as long as you can. But at some level, you can't do it because the economics don't support it. Yeah. And it's a struggle.
What advice if you have MBA students, undergrad students in here, and teachers like us? If you were standing in front of an MBA class or an undergrad class, what would be some of the things you'd tell them to be the future leaders for the next 50 years?
Ooh.
They are new leaders, correct? They
Yeah.
take over.
Well, things I haven't already said. Yeah. Well, well, first of all, I'd say one of the things, I'll answer your question as best I can. One of the things at Citrix that I think is immutable for me that I learned is that you always want to be doing the things that you believe are becoming more relevant over time. If you're doing things that become less relevant over time, then you got to do something. You'll have to do something new at some point, right? So inventing new technologies, innovations, et cetera, okay. I know we're ahead of the curve on remote access, but, we're going to go for the low-hanging fruit now, and then more and more people will want to work remotely because connectivity is exploding, devices are exploding, blah, blah, blah. So, you're on the right side of history, all right? So you always want to be on the right side of history. The same thing goes for managing and culture, all right? So our culture was very egalitarian, very open, and it, we put it in place. It was put in place not by me. I learned how to repeat it, but it turns out that an open, egalitarian culture is a culture that actually ended up being more and more relevant as the workforce got younger and younger. Okay, so as a leader, there's a great book that's written by Bob Johansen, who was retired from Institute for the Future. Okay, it's called Leaders Make the Future. Okay, and Bob, by the way, I think he's known to be the only futurist that stayed in the business long enough to be held accountable and measurable to the forecasts he predicted, okay, about the future. Awesome guy, all right, an awesome book. So it's about anticipating, all right, on all these levels. And, I like to keep things simple because, for a lot of reasons. And so I think you anticipate, the workforce, how to create an incredible environment, and how that environment is self-reinforcing so that it gets a life of its own, and that takes leadership. And then the second is anticipating what customers are going to need and want, right? So, one of the examples I love to use about this is Michelin Stars, okay? So, we all know you can go to a great restaurant, it has 1 Michelin star, it has 2, it has 3, all right? So if it has 1 star, why do you think it gets the first star? Someone? Great food, right? The first star is for outstanding, consistent food, right? What do you think the second star is for? Service. You get this over-the-top, amazing, consistent service. What do you think the third star is for? Experience, right. It's the experience. I call the third star the magic, okay? And the magic is being served the glass of wine or the right napkin or whatever utensil, whatever, before you even ask for it. And by the way, that's the hardest star to get, all right? And, but it is the magic. And so I think, the advice I'd give you is, understand that you have to make sure that the food is great, the service is great, and you got to be putting magic in the business. And where does the magic come? Well, I think the magic comes from inspiring people, having an opinion about the future, willing to bet on it and try things and fail, and do it, as a team. At Citrix, and having the right mindset. At Citrix, the tech industry is, look, I think Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and, many others are fantastic. They're just amazing. Elon Musk, et cetera. All amazing, okay? But at Citrix, we didn't believe in rock stars. We were a rock band, okay? And so, every great band, has, maybe a great vocalist, all right? But the great vocalist is nothing without everyone else that's on the stage and behind the stage, et cetera. And, and so that kind of leadership, I think, matters more now and going forward than it mattered, in the past. So I would highly recommend that. I would recommend something that was, recommended to us, when we graduated from Darden, and that is leave your diploma at home. Leave it at home. And so I would highly recommend that. And then, maybe a final thing, we can keep talking or take another question, is an expression that I was taught by Roger Roberts, CEO that brought me to Citrix, is why wonder when you can just ask? Now, what I mean by that is in your life, and especially in your early career, and I have plenty of scars from doing this wrong, and that is you're afraid to ask questions. You're afraid to ask for advice because you think that asking a question or asking for advice is an act of weakness. It's because, wow, if I ask that question, they'll know that I don't know the answer to the question, and I should know the answer to the question, so I won't ask it. Same thing with advice. No, I can't ask for advice because I'm in charge of this, and I'm supposed to know all, see all, be all. The fact of the matter is, the most successful people I know are the ones that ask for the most advice. And they see it as an act of confidence, curiosity, and and sort of not worrying about all that other stuff. They're trying to move the ball forward, right? So I know it sounds a little corny, but ask for a lot of advice. You'll be amazed about what you'll learn, all right? And then you have to process it. You have to process it. And if you're lucky, you'll find people and meet people along the way that I was fortunate to meet that gave great advice, and I figured out how to follow advice, So just a few thoughts.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Whether they're undergrads or graduate or professional students at NSU, that by the time you graduate, we want to unleash your potential to be leaders. And the speakers that we have here, and that y'all have had an opportunity to see, actually bring that real world experience to life. But I think that's hopefully what you get in the classroom. At the Huizinga College, we do pride ourselves that our professors are not only academically qualified, but they have had real world experience. And many of your professors have had that. But tonight, you've had a real special professor, and I think has shown you that follow your passion, core values, I think we talked about that, but follow your passion, keep your aim above your reach, but use the principles and practices of business to see your passion be satisfied and you become successful. You think Mark Templeton created the virtual private network? He followed his passion and he saw it through business practices to make it become the successful business it is today. A $3 billion business that took everything you learned and the leadership you undertake to make it. So let's hear it again for Mark. Thank you. You can hide this and leave it at home.
No, this I'm going to put in my office.
But it is our small token of appreciation for your lecture as a Hall of Fame member, Entrepreneur Hall of Fame of Nova Southeastern University and the H. Wayne Huizenga College of Business and Entrepreneurship. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. How much it is. Can I tell one more quick story?
Oh, yeah, we love it. Go ahead.
One more real quick story. And I'm reminded because of Wayne Huizenga's contribution here to the school. And so obviously he's an icon in American business. Nothing short of an icon. He's an icon in our community as well. And I didn't know him at all. Okay. So after an earnings report one Wednesday, we did them on Wednesdays, I go back to my office in the days we had, I had a fax machine in my office, and there's a fax on my fax machine, and it's from Wayne, all right, who I didn't know from anyone. I never met him. And it was a letter of congratulations that he faxed to me, around a great quarter in the performance, and it was short. It was personal. He signed it, and, kind of like it blew my mind. And some years later, I got a chance to meet him and learn, what a special man this guy is. And you should be proud to have his name here. And, kind of put it in the random acts of kindness, honorable intentions, and someone who's really, doing the unusual, like, who would do that? Who would do that? So you should be proud to have his name, and I'm proud, to know him and have known him, so anyway, I just want to tell that little story because it reminded me. All right, get out there and make the future. Okay?